Hi, welcome to Magically Gluten Free. Today we are making churro toffee. Woo! You'll need 4 sticks of butter, any brand, unsalted, because then you can control how salty your toffee is. You need 1 2/3 cups of white sugar, 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of corn syrup, a teaspoon of salt and vanilla, and 3 ounces of water, and then a nice saucepan. I like this one because it's high on the sides and it's just big enough for everything that we need. So to start, we're going to put all of the ingredients that I just listed off except for the salt and the vanilla in this pan. And then on the side, I have my white chocolate chips, but we'll come to those later. And a sheet tray with a silicone baking mat, or you can use parchment paper. I wouldn't recommend wax paper or just a grease cookie sheet. Your toffee is not going to come off easily. So I'm going to throw all my butter in and get it to start melting a little bit before I put in all the rest of my other ingredients, just to give the mixture a head start. My name's Paris, and I am the one who mostly posts on Magically Gluten Free. My husband also posts on there. I went to culinary school, and this is a modified recipe for buttered toffee. So I put my butter on medium-high heat. Some other things you will need for this is a spatula and a thermometer. This is an instant read thermometer, but a candy thermometer would also work. This one's really nice because you just turn it on and it will read the temperature almost automatically, and it can do it in Celsius and in Fahrenheit. All right, so we have our butter pretty much melted. There's still a couple of bits that haven't completely melted, but we're gonna toss our sugar into the pot. We have our brown sugar, water, corn syrup, and then we're gonna wait on the salt and vanilla. All right, so I'm gonna put this back up to about a medium heat, and we're just gonna stir. So we've added a couple ingredients into this toffee that allows you to stir it all the way to the very end, and you should stir it because there's dairy in it and you don't want the dairy to burn. So we have the corn syrup in there, which helps prevent the sugar from crystallizing at the very end, which would result in like a really crumbly toffee. This one would be nice and smooth with like a really good snap to it, just like what you can find in the Disney parks. Another thing, if you were interested, you could also add a vanilla bean into this at this point in time if you didn't want to use vanilla. I honestly kept forgetting every time I went to the store to get vanilla beans, so I didn't have vanilla beans. And the mixture, you can still see there's bits of butter on the top. We're just gonna wait until this comes up to a boil, and we're gonna, as my confectionary's chef always said, we are going to cook the sugar to remove the water from it. So we're gonna heat this until it reaches 295 degrees, And then we're gonna pour it onto that baking mat as I was talking about before. Because there's this much butter, before we coat it in the white chocolate, we will probably have to dab away some of the fat that escapes from the toffee just so that the white chocolate can adhere to it, and then we can roll it in the sugar and cinnamon mixture. All right, so you have some bubbles coming up. So now if your pot looks like it's boiling too quickly or it's about to come over the sides, ours is still good, but you can move down the temperature just a smidge and just keep stirring it. We're gonna start seeing the color change in a couple of minutes. This is gonna take a few minutes for it to reach the consistency, the temperature, and the color that we're looking for. So I've turned mine down to low. And I'm just gonna stir it. You can always use a bigger pot too, if you're nervous about it. Cooking it on a lower temperature is not gonna do anything to it. It's just gonna take a little bit longer to get where you're wanting to go. So our heat is still on low. It's still bubbling away. Just making sure that I have my spatula running over every part of this pan so that no sugar or butter gets scorched on the bottom of it. So just throwing my thermometer in there real quick. It's in the 220 range, so you still have a ways to go. Don't be surprised if it takes a while. We're caramelizing the sugar and the milk solids from the butter in here. So it's gonna take a while, especially if you don't want it to burn, which you don't. No one likes burnt caramel. And it's right about 240, so it still has a ways to go. And we're looking for that like nice amber color when it gets to the temperature. But see how it's bubbling a lot slower? The foam has receded. Still on pretty low heat. On my stove, it's about on 3. One or 277, almost 280, so we're about 10 degrees off, and you can see the color has changed. So that is at 295, and so I'm just gonna let it cool for a second before I add in my vanilla and salt. So our toffee is done. It has reached the temperature it needs to be. So our toffee is at the right temperature. I'm gonna add in my vanilla and my salt. It's gonna bubble up and you're gonna be able to smell the vanilla. That is the alcohol in the extract burning off. That is why you don't want to put it in the beginning, otherwise you're not gonna have any vanilla flavor at the end unless you're using vanilla beans. And I'm just gonna stir it until it's come back together. And it's getting all foamy. There is some separation of the butter and the caramel mixture, but we'll just pour it out anyways. And we'll have to blot the extra fat off of this after it cools. You can also do it in a pan, a smaller pan than a sheet tray, and you can cut it and have the nice squares, thick squares like they sell at Disneyland. I'm doing this for a party, so I don't need it in big squares. I want it in small squares. All right, so I'm letting it cool off. I'm trying to get it to cool off faster by putting it on this rack right here. I blotted off all the extra butter. There was a lot, so don't be alarmed if yours does have a decent amount of butter coming off of it. And then I just scored it with, I have a bench scraper, which looks like this, and I just portioned it into smaller pieces. Some of it is just going to be cracked because this is a little bit thinner than it was right here, and I'm just continuing to let it cool. These aren't really big squares, as you can tell, because I have a bunch of yummy treats that I will also be serving with this. Be careful to melt this over a double boiler or in your microwave. I'd recommend only doing it at about 20 seconds at a time. Milk chocolate is prone to burning and overheating really quickly and easily, so just make sure to not burn your white chocolate. All right, so the white chocolate is all melted. You can certainly use the melting wafers or the like white wafers that you can get at like Hobby Lobby or like a baking supply store. That will definitely coat them and it will be less thick. I'm just using white chocolate today because these are gonna sit outside and I want them to not melt as quickly. If I was to put coconut oil in this, that would mimic those baking wafers that I had just mentioned, and it'd be a lot thinner, easier to coat everything with. But with coconut oil or with one of those wafers, they tend to melt faster, and we're gonna be outside, so I don't want melty toffee squares. Toffee that I had scored earlier, and once it was cool, I was just able to break it, and it broke pretty easily into these. A couple of them didn't break as cleanly, but I certainly have plenty of toffee for everybody at the party tomorrow. I'm gonna take this spoon out and I'm gonna put it on the tray right here. I have one of these little forks that typically is easier to use when you work with chocolate. You can find it at a candy store. So I am gonna dip my toffee in there, cover it with the chocolate, take it out and just bang it to get a layer of the chocolate off. And all of that off. I'm going to scrape it on the side of the bowl just to get some of the drips off. Then I'm going to sprinkle the top. Something that I found made this very easy is putting cinnamon and sugar already down on the mat. You just kind of tap off a little extra, toss it on top of that, and then you take cinnamon and sugar and put it on top. I do this, and whatever extra cinnamon and sugar I have left over, I just store in a container and I use it for snickerdoodles or French toast days. I also like to toss waffles in cinnamon and sugar and make them into churros. You can use it for churros. There's a lot of extra uses that you can use for this extra sugar and cinnamon mixture. Just make sure to let this set up before you move it.